Hello everyone, it is Micah again, and today we're going to be delving into that mysterious and Burton-esque realm known as Doomscape. And of course, like I always do with raids of this size, this updated guide was going to be split into two parts. But before you jump into the raid, I want to suggest you check with Slip Slicks in Idleshire to see if you unlocked the Unidentified Flying Object quest. If you did, this will get you a drop from the raid that will also allow you to choose a level 60 accessory or a glam. This quest is repeatable each week as well, so if you need some free gear or you just want the glam, go ahead and go grab it. But let's get started because there's a whole lot to cover. The first boss is a throwback to a secret boss in Final Fantasy VI, and being a huge fan of that game made me ridiculously excited when I saw him. Deathgaze, and I'm gonna warn you now, this is the one boss in the raid that causes the most wipes and just random deaths, because true to his name, he has a lot of one-shot abilities. Fortunately, those abilities are very easy to handle if you know how, hence why we're here. The first abilities we're gonna look at are pretty hard to miss. They are Void Death and Void Arrow 3. Both of these attacks will create a large swirling circle in the middle of the arena. Void Death will be red and purple, whereas Void Arrow will be greenish in color, and you can handle them almost identically. When the Void Death circle spawns, you want to run away from it, as far away from it as possible, which means you're going to want to go either east or west to one of the remaining walls. Void Death is going to pull you in, and the further you are away from it, the better your chances are of escaping. As soon as you're pulled in, you gotta start running away from it again, because if you're caught in that swirling circle when he finishes casting, you're gonna be instantly killed. Void Arrow is the opposite. This one is going to push you away, so when the greenish swirling vortex appears, you want to be sure you're standing between it and the wall, or, just run to the wall to be safe. That way you're not going to be pushed over the edge, fall, and become a puddle of light on the sidewalk below. Throughout the battle, Deathgaze will also disappear for a moment as he moves from one side of the ship to the other, and when he does, one of two things may happen. Sometimes he simply switches sides and a square-shaped pool of yuck will appear on the ground, but this yuck is completely safe to stand in. The only time it becomes unsafe and will instantly kill you is when Deathgaze casts Void Death 4, and it begins to pulse with this eerie glow. So to play it safe, just stay out of the yuck. But if you need to step onto it when it's not glowing to avoid an attack, you can. These squares also act as a hard timer for the battle, because if the fight takes too long, the entire arena is going to be covered in these square pools of yuck and the party is just going to wipe. But I've only seen that happen a couple of times, and that was back when the raid was relatively new. Since most people stay out of the yuck by default, you can use these squares to handle another ability called Void Arrow 2. When cast, this ability will mark one player from each party with this green marker. If you're marked, you're going to want to move away from the party, because once it disappears, a tornado will appear in its place where you were standing. That will do damage and knock back anybody who comes near it, potentially throwing them over the side of the ship. The best place to put these, in my opinion, is on the squares of yuck, since everybody avoids them anyway. But honestly, anywhere is fine as long as you're away from the party. The other thing that can happen when he switches sides is a two-part attack beginning with Void Blizzard 4. Deathgaze will cast this before he disappears, and then once he does disappear, 1 to 2 proximity indicators will be left behind. To avoid taking damage from the large chunks of ice that are going to fall, you're going to want to move to the opposite side of the ship. But you want to be directly across from these indicators, because the moment Deathgaze appears again, he's going to cast Void Arrow 4, which is going to push you directly off the side of the ship unless the large chunks of ice are in the way to catch you. Healers, you need to be on guard for one attack in particular, Doomsday. This ability will place an unavoidable 18-second doom timer, indicated by this icon, on 2 people that will, of course, kill whoever it's on when the timer hits 0. You can Isuna this debuff away, so as soon as you see Doomsday cast, prioritize getting those Isunas out on whoever becomes marked. The only other thing for everyone to watch out for is Blizzard 3, which will place 5 AoE markers on the ground that will do some decent damage if not avoided, and 2 void sprites that will appear and start throwing out random AoEs. Just DPS them down, they're fairly weak. The last thing I want to say about this battle though is Deathgaze's attacks happen really quickly, just back to back to back. So you need to be on your toes with this one to avoid all those insta-death moves. But like I always say, if you die a few times, don't worry about it. It happens when you're learning to fight. It's all good. Don't let it bother you. Anyway, with that, Deathgaze is down and you can move on into the city of Doomscape. The first boss you're going to encounter here is a giant jester of a baddie named Ferdiad Hollow. This dude is significantly easier than Deathgaze, so you can relax a little bit. The move that Ferdiad always opens up with and will do continuously throughout the battle is called Abyssal Scythe, which will mark 3 or more people with this red overhead indicator. When that indicator disappears, a scythe will appear wherever you were standing at the time and begin to spin in place, doing damage to anyone near it and giving them a stacking vulnerability debuff. If you get this indicator, simply move away from the party. If you are the tank, you're gonna wanna watch out for Jonglier's X, Ferdiad's tank buster, that you need to mitigate. And even mitigated, this will take your HP down fairly far, but it does have a decent cast timer, allowing you plenty of time to defend yourself, and plenty of time for your healer to top you off if need be. He also has a smaller AoE directly in front of him called Jester's Reap that would do a fairly large amount of damage to anyone it hits. But all you need to do to avoid Reap is step to the side. Next we have 2 attacks that will begin with Ferdiad summoning a group of Atomos. If pairs of blue and gold Atomos appear around the outside border of the arena, Ferdiad will cast Wormhole. When he does, Aether is going to appear near him and tether itself to an Atomos. Once Ferdiad finishes casting, that Aether is going to shoot across the arena and into the mouth of the Atomos it was tethered to, who's going to consume it. Then it's going to reappear in the mouth of the Atomos of corresponding color and explode, doing a fairly large chunk of damage. If the Aether is in the shape of a sphere, the explosion will do damage in a large circle around it, so you need to run far away from it. If it's in this shape, which reminds me of a pretzel, the only way to avoid taking damage is by stacking on it. So you need to pay attention so you know which Atomos to run away from and which one to run toward. And I know it may sound a little confusing and it may be a little tricky the first couple times, but you're gonna get it. The other attack involving Atomos will have a circle of them appearing in the center of the arena. And when they do, Ferdiad will become invulnerable and hide in the middle. When these Atomos appear, move so you are standing in between them. That way you're not hit when they spit out a group of Ferdiad's fools. Small imps that will do some pretty standard attacks and are incredibly weak. You will want to DPS these fools down quickly, avoiding the random AoE markers that appear. Every time you take out a fool, an Atomos will also disappear. While this is all happening, Ferdiad will also be attacking the party with an AoE called Jester's Reward that will do a large swipe that covers half the arena and do a large chunk of damage. So avoid this when you can and hope that your healers heal you up if you can't. Then, after all the fools and Atomos are dead and gone, Ferdiad will become vulnerable to attack once again and use Jester's Jig, a raid-wide, unavoidable AoE that does negligible damage, as long as all the fools were killed, but they should have been. They go down relatively fast. Next, we have a pair of attacks called Black Fire and Black Bolt. Now, Black Bolt's easy. It's just your standard attack that can be avoided by stacking with other party members, so just look for that stack indicator and group up. Black fire, however, is signaled by a series of circular indicators that will appear on the ground. These indicators are going to grow until they roughly double in size and then explode, doing a fair amount of damage. A whole lot more damage if you're standing where two of these circles overlap. So you're going to need to use your best judgment here to find a safe spot to stand to avoid this move, but the circles should be spaced out far enough that finding the safe areas should be relatively easy to do. And finally, we have that one attack that at least one person messes up every single time. And that attack begins with Ferdiad casting Debilitator. Now, Debilitator will place a red or blue debuff on you and the entire alliance, and everybody's debuff is going to be exactly the same. The red means you take increased damage from fire-based attacks, and the blue means you take increased damage from water-based attacks. Next, 12 circles will appear around the arena in groups of 4. Some will be blue puddles of water, and some will be red pools of flame. After a short countdown, these pools are going to explode, doing raid-wide fire or water damage. More red circles means more fire damage, and more blue circles, of course, means more water damage. So you want to make sure that all of the circles are the opposite color of your alliance's debuff. You can change the color of these pools by simply stepping on them, and it's best just to let one person do this for each group. Otherwise, you're going to have too many people running over them, and they're just going to be blinking back and forth, and it will be a big mess. So if you see someone switching the colors, just let them do it. Unless, of course, they're switching them to the wrong color. And there's always that one person in every alliance who does this wrong, and they're just super duper confident that they're doing it right. And they're gonna just keep trying to switch them back, and it can just be a big mess. Anyway, try to get as many of these pools the opposite color of the debuff as you can. And really, that's all there is to Ferdiad. There is one more mini-boss that I want to cover that will only appear if someone in the Alliance has the aforementioned unidentified flying object quest active. If no one does, it's going to be replaced by a succubus boss and some fodder enemies, but I honestly haven't seen these since the unidentified flying object quest became a thing. This mini-boss is of course the Proto-Ultima, and it doesn't have too many abilities that actually need covered, since most of his attacks are the same as the Ultima you fought in the Praetorium, so I'm only going to focus on the attacks that need covered. So after a few standard Ultima attacks, he's going to use Aether Chemical Flare, which will do unavoidable raid-wide damage, and then he's going to disappear. A glowing sphere will then appear in the middle of the arena with a stack marker on it. Everybody needs to stack up on the sphere to negate the damage of it exploding. After it does, it will be replaced by a red sphere, which everybody needs to run away from. And you gotta run right up to the edge of the arena, right up to this energy porter that will appear. After this one explodes, 2 more smaller spheres will appear in either the north and the south, or the east and the west. If they're in the north and the south, you want to run east and west, and vice versa. After these 2 spheres explode, Ultima's gonna drop down and shoot a laser directly down the middle of the arena, killing anyone standing in its way. So you need to start moving as soon as these last 2 spheres explode, because Ultima does not give you a lot of time to dodge that laser. There will also be a series of ads to take out, Dreadnoughts being the first, followed by Prototype Bits, and then Aether Collectors. Now you need to deal with these as you dodge all their AoEs, and the healers keep you alive, because Ultima's also going to be doing some heavy unavoidable AoEs in the meantime. Finally, after all the Aether Collectors are down, you need to DPS Ultima down hard before he can finish casting Supernova and wipe the party. And that's it for Proto-Ultima. He hits pretty hard, but the fight itself is fairly quick. That is also all there is for part 1 of my updated guide to Doomscape. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments, and if this video was helpful, I hope you drop me a like and subscribe for more. You can also follow me on Twitter, which is linked in the description. I will get to work right now on part 2 so I can have that out to you as soon as I possibly can. And as per the usual, it's been a hoot. Until next time, have fun.